All right, everyone, a very, very, very good evening to each and every one of you out here. Hello, Sophia. Welcome back to our third live streaming session. I hope you had a great day. I hope you're having a great evening. All right, so I hope everyone is present in this third live streaming session that we are holding, right? Like I say, we have our live streaming sessions all the way from Monday till Friday, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I make sure to personally provide you three live streaming sessions, right? The one that happens in the morning, the second one that happens around 1 hour before the English share market closure, and the third one happens once the market is closed for the day, and that is when we talk a lot from the educational point of view. But today we have something very important but very impactful, right? Because currently, as you're all aware, right, the US elections are right around the corner, right? 5th of November. So, almost based on your calendars, if you could see, just in a span of 1 week, the electoral polls are going to be commenced, and then we are going to be talking a lot about, about talking about how the elections are going to have effect on the English share market, how the US elections are going to have an effect on the dollar, and how the US elections are going to have an impact on their own economy, right? The US economy. So there is so much to look forward to, there's so much to discuss and talk. Yes, I agree. There are people who are like, but Harsh, isn't this third live streaming session based on providing technical analysis? Do not worry, we are here every single day, so there is no rush into learning. I'm going to be here. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to hold your hand and explain to you everything. But right now, since the coming week is completely focused on the US elections, what the US elections are going to hold, or what is it that people are expecting the US elections to, to produce in terms of results, right? So, a lot of, competition between Mr. Donald Trump and Mrs. Kamala Harris. So, there's a big tug of war, both of them are, being very competitive. So, we're going to talk a lot about the US elections. So, make sure you stay tuned. But before that, I hope everyone is up and ready. Make sure you have your pen, paper, water, everything that is required. Make sure you have your fluids on point and keep yourself attentive, right? We're going to have a lot of discussions, and we are going to analyze together, right? I am not prepared completely in terms of what will the market show, what the US election show, but as and how we talk, we will get more information as to what are the points to consider, how are the charts looking in terms of the US economy's index, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones 30, how are they technically showing patterns or structures based on what we can kind of start to predict or speculate, how the elections could turn out, and what can how can it affect the markets. All right, so before getting started, to all of you who are new, please make sure to keep the chat box, active. Keep typing. It's important for me to keep, receiving your feedback, your queries, so that will keep me going on, and I will understand. I will be able to gauge how well I'm performing. Are there any queries or questions that I need to answer? So again, a very good evening, Sophia. A very good evening to our Mr. Lee. Right, looking forward to today's sharing on U.S. elections. That is correct. We'll be talking a lot about U.S. elections. All right. So quickly, let me introduce myself. I am Harsh. I have 8 years of experience trading the financial markets. I mainly focus on trading the forex markets, the commodity markets such as gold, silver, oil, as well as the US indices, correct? Now that we're going to talk a lot about the US elections, see how we are able to compare the US elections and the US indices, correct? I am more of a technical trader, having an array of technical analysis tools which I use for analyzing the markets, such as supply, demand, trend analysis, um, we have order flow, we have other, there are several varieties of technical analysis tools that I use as a technical trader, that I use as a technical analyst. All right, so here at Dolphin Markets, our main motive for you is to, keep you entertained, keep you updated, keep you educated, and nonetheless make you money, right? So we provide you with analysis, we provide you with trading opportunities, right, called as hot stocks, as well as providing you with trading education. So the first two live streaming sessions that occur during the day are mainly focused towards providing you trading opportunities when the Indian share market is open, right? Providing you with hot stocks. And we have already showcased time and time again that yes, we make sure to keep you updated by showcasing our credibility, our performance, by maintaining a 97 profitability in just a month and a half, right? So in 1.5 months, we have been able to, hit a profitability ratio of 97. We are doing this to showcase our power, to showcase our potential of, providing returns in the stock market. And if we can provide returns in the Indian stock market, we can do much better in the international markets, right? In the forex, gold, and CFD markets, right? Which consist of different indices and all that. So we just want to show our, capabilities in the Indian share market, and also showcase you that if you can make money in the Indian share market, you can make much more in the international markets. You can make much more in the forex and gold markets. All right. Now, today's topic is going to be about the US elections and how it's going to affect the Indian economy, and how it's going to affect the dollar, and how it's going to affect the US economy on its own, right? So, let me quickly show you in terms of what the US elections hold, how the US elections are going to plan out, what is in the way people are planning out. So, quickly, I hope everyone is aware when the US elections are taking place. Just give me a minute. We are going to find out exactly first to make sure that each and every one of you are aware about it, right? So when is the US election? I've mentioned it to you, it's on the 5th of November. But to all those people who have any doubt, the US election, so the polls are going to commence. The electoral polls are going to start commencing on 5th. And that is the time when we would be noticing either Mr. Trump is going to win or Mr. Kamala Harris is going to win, right? So you can go through some of the websites and you will see that, all right, here are the certain things, that are to be kept in mind. Now, understanding the US elections, this particular website, aljazeera.com, it gives a very pictorial representation of how the elections take place, how many seats are present in each, constituency per state, and then, they carry out the entire detailed description of how the elections take place. What is the procedure? We don't want to get into those, but this is a very good analysis and a very good description of how things function during the election time. So I hope people can use this as a reference if they are interested to know what is the entire process of how the elections take place, how are people elected, what is the process of people getting elected, how are the president and the vice president elected, so on and so forth. All right. What we are trying to focus today is not how the process of elections work, but what will the possible action of the US elections take place over the markets, correct? So as you're pretty much aware, when we're comparing, let me show it to you in my own perspective, right? So we're going to talk in terms of me showcasing you on this plain whiteboard. Remember, this is TradingView. All right. For people who are not aware, or people who think, why is it blank? Do not worry. But because I'm going to do a lot of typing today, right? Because today's main focus is about understanding what the US elections hold for the Indian stock market, as well as for their own, the US stock market and the dollar also. So we have Mr. Trump versus Mrs. Harris, right? Mrs. Kamala Harris. So we're just going to keep it in short. Mr. Trump versus Mr. Harris. So I hope that to get an entire gist about how the elections are. Mr. Trump is from, let me just call them as Mr. T and Mrs. H, right? So we have Mr. T, who is Trump, and then we have Mrs. Harris as Mrs. H. I hope just to keep it small, right? So we're going to denote them as T and H. T for Mr. Trump, Mr. Donald Trump, and H for Mrs. Kamala Harris. Not H for Harsh, all right? H for Mrs. Kamala Harris, all right? I hope people are understanding, okay? So, as we were discussing, so Mr. Trump, right? Mr. Trump is from which party? Any guesses? Mr. Trump is basically from the Republican Party, right? And Mrs. Kamala Harris, right? Mrs. H. H is from the Dominion Party, right? Now people are like, what is Republican Party? What is Dominion Party? It is fine. You don't have to get into those details as such. But as in how we are going to talk about it, you will, you'll be getting a better clarity. Yes, Sophia, is there any news analysis available? That is exactly what I am delving into, and we are going to cover up a lot in terms of how the markets are might react to the news events of the U.S. elections, so on and so forth. So Mr. Trump versus Mrs. Kamala Harris, right? So Mr. Trump is representing the Republican Party, while Mrs. Kamala Harris is representing the Dominion Party. Now people need to understand that Mr. Trump is known for his hawkish behavior, right? I have already explained what is a hawkish behavior, and Mrs. Kamala Harris is going to have more on. Yes, Sophia is writing. I noticed many live broadcast rooms are discussing the impact of the US presidential election. We are going to quickly dive into it, but I just want to give a quick summary as to what the parties are, and then we will start looking at the market. So do not worry, Sophia. I'm going to talk about that also. So we have Mr. Trump, who has more of a hawkish behavior, and Mrs. Kamala Harris, who's going to have more of a dovish behavior, right? Hawkish behavior is generally having an aggressive attitude towards the short term, while dovish behavior is, looking for the community as a whole, trying to uplift the economy as a whole. Hawkish behavior is more towards, improving the economic status of a country. Dovish behavior is more towards, keeping the looking after the people, looking after looking after the citizens of a particular country. Now coming to how the markets are going to behave, what are we trying to understand, and how we try to connect the dots. So as you can see currently, based on the tug of war between Mr. Trump and Mrs. Harris, both of them currently, as of the current stats, are sitting at 50 by 50, right? So both of them are currently at having a very they are having a very solid competition going between the two. There is no one party that is exceeding. Both the parties are fighting neck to neck. So when both the parties are fighting neck to neck, the uncertainty rises. When the uncertainty rises, there is more pessimism in the market. There is a lot of expectation that who might win, who might not. Now, for people who think that, or if the stats believed that only Mr. Trump is going to win, then the markets would already take into factor that yes, Mr. Trump is only going to win. But that is not the case right now. Both Mr. Trump and Mrs. Harris, both are having stiff competition. Both are fighting for the position of the president of the United States of America. So both of them are having a very competitive tug of war. Now, when such a behavior takes place, you have to understand that there is going to be a lot of anticipation, and with anticipation comes a lot of volatility in the markets. I wanted to show you a web page that showcases this particular article that shows how the elections can have an impact on the Indian markets, right? So as you can see, investors are assessing the potential effects on the IT sector. Now, why people are focused so much on the IT sector? Because the IT sector, the information technology sector, has a strong connection between the Indian IT industry and the US. I hope many people are aware that some of the best IT based companies in the US are run by Indians. They are majorly managed by Indians. So, directly or indirectly, they have a very strong connection, right, between the Indian IT sector and the US um, economy as a whole, right? So people are expecting that whether it is Mrs. Harris or whether it is Donald Trump, there are going to be ramifications for the sector and in India as well. So, in terms of whether the Indian companies are going to get affected, the Indian IT companies are significantly affected by the US economy because they heavily depend on American clients. It's vice versa. American economy depends on Indians as well as the Indian economy depends on American clients, right? It's a give and take, right? So major IT players, we have major IT players such as TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL Technologies, Tech Mahindra, some of the big blue chip companies, they generate more than half of their income from the US. So changes in the US economy have a direct effect on the revenues and growth for these firms. So, and here are some of the projections that people are expecting for the IT business, to reach valuations by 2025. So here, one of the founding researchers, right, of an investment company is stating that the IT sector will be particularly affected to the way business operates in the US, which involves currency fluctuations. These factors have greater impact on IT compared to other sectors. Now, give or take, how will the sector be affected? Who is going to win? Who is not going to win? When you talk about Trump, right? Trump is a person who is hawkish, right? As I was talking to you on TradingView. So, if someone is hawkish, right? Trump has he has a hawkish behavior, so he is going to be looking at more towards making strict policies, right? Making strict policies. At the same time, we are going to be looking at making sure that he might be trying to even conclude the Russian Ukraine war. There are many speculations out there, but the main aspect, the most powerful point of Trump is making strict foreign policy. Yeah, it's not just any policy, but it's foreign policy. So this will be having effect on the immigrants who come from abroad to work in US. Whenever Trump has been in power, the immigrants have always faced quite a backlash. Correct. So we have Mr. Trump, who is, if he does come into power, having hawkish behavior, he wants to make sure of making strict foreign policies, as well as, he wants to cut on the interest rates, right? He wants to cut on the interest rates to promote, exports, correct? So these are certain points. Remember, Mr. T has more of a hawkish behavior, while Kamala Harris, on the other side, she has more of a dovish behavior. Dovish means which are caring more for the people. So she would be interested in, you know, making, what do you call, uplifting the economy, uplifting the living conditions in US, right? Since not all people are living in villas, right, in US, so she wants to take care by uplifting the living conditions of underprivileged, people. So underprivileged. She wants to, make improve the medical policies, right? Improve medical policies, right? And she would be also interested. Remember, Dominion Party and the Republican Party. So Dominion Party, they have a general consensus towards working towards mainly first uplifting their own people, especially the backward class people, in terms of people who are not financially stable, or people who are not getting benefited from government amenities, while the Republican Party, especially under the supervision of Mr. Trump, They are like, we want to focus on first uplifting the economy, right? We want to boost exports, we want to reduce price, we want to make sure that we can, have strict foreign policies so that we can, provide more betterment to the US citizens, compared to the world, and so on and so forth. So I hope people are able to understand. Remember, I mean, everyone has a different style of explaining things, right? Some people like to always go to websites, or I like to keep it as natural and as practical as possible. So when two strong contenders in the US, who are standing for the US elections, and remember, both of them are going, cutthroat. Both of them are, very close by, in terms of, there is no clear winner or clear, speculation for anyone to win by, a big fold. There is stiff competition, so there is going to be a lot of uncertainty in the markets, right? Now, in terms of what will happen in the markets, how will the markets get affected? Currently, as you are aware, as of now, the markets have started to show some bullish behavior, with the IT, with the bank and the financial service sector spearheading the bullish sentiment in the Indian share market. But with the onset of the US elections upcoming next week, there will be uncertainty in the markets, right? So people have to make sure and be aware that, such things, when they do occur in the financial markets, please make sure that, you do your due diligence and try to connect as many dots as possible, right? I hope that makes things clear, correct? Now, coming back to where we were talking about, in terms of how will we expect the market to react, right? How will we expect the markets to react, especially not just the English share market, but also the US index, right? We're going to talk about the US market as well as the dollar, also, correct? Very important to keep in mind, because everything is interconnected, right? Let's quickly have a look at what, projections are in terms of the dollar and the S&P 500. Quickly, let us go back to the article to see if there is any other important aspect that we are, because again, with all the with the geopolitical uncertainties going around, and with the US elections around the corner, please expect, like, even the US elections are going to have a direct or indirect, implication on almost each and every country, which is like present in the world, correct? A lot of people are still speculating Mr. Trump to win, but nonetheless, we don't want to, yeah, we can do our due diligence, but still, in terms of what will happen, how will it happen, let us try to connect as many dots as possible, right? Let us look at some other articles, and then we will try to look at it on based on charts, in terms of uh, what are the markets currently showing, and do we expect something different to happen, in the markets. So approximately 244 people are eligible to vote. Imagine, that's a pretty significant number. Sophia is writing, that was a good explanation. Thank you, Sophia. I'm just trying to keep it as simple, and so that people can understand it quickly, correct? Now we can see the key events. So first, it's been going on. Remember, they're having campaigns, right? The elections do happen on a particular date. That will be happening on the 5th of November. But they need to campaign. Campaigns are where these candidates go to different parts of the country to contest, to talk about what reforms they will come out with, what they expect, to bring changes in. If they get elected, what are the promises that they are assuring to the citizens of USA? So there is going to be a lot of campaigning taking place, right? And based on the campaigning, you get a consensus as to the crowd optimism or pessimism, like who is good, who has more potential or capability to win, right? So this particular website, as you can see, they're basically, giving a time stamp. It's called as a timeline or a time stamp, but of what are the happening, what are the different promises. Like I was talking about Kamala Harris, right? So what are the nominees' promises? Because the entire crux of the U.S. president elections boils down to what benefits are the citizens of the USA, right? Citizens of the United States of America going to benefit, with whoever comes into presidency, correct? So for Mrs. Kamala Harris, she has stated that her top priority from day one to be will be to lower food and housing costs for working family. Remember, she has a dovish behavior, so she is going to look mainly for uplifting, uplifting the people who are the middle class, lower class, right? In terms of uplifting their standards of living or reducing costs. She plans to prohibit price gouging on groceries, assist first time home buyers, and incentives to boost economy. So everything related to uplifting people or reducing the prices or easing out policies which can help people get better mortgages, reduce in grocery prices, or boosting housing supply. So these are the kind of promises that Miss Kamala Harris, is providing. While Trump, on the other hand, is going to be focused mainly on trade, right? He wants to restrict, he wants to put forward the US citizen before any other person. So he's going to have strict immigration policies coming in place. He wants to ease out on trade policies so that there is more flourishing of goods coming in and out of USA. He wants to reduce the interest rates on the dollar so that the exports can start to increase and get surplus, so the economy, the US economy, can benefit as a whole. So let us see what are the points. Elections, Arizona, again, different states having different opinions. I mean, you can always go to this particular website and have a read if you wish to, but nothing else in particular, right? Now, coming back to, let's look at how it shows on TradingView. I hope people are able to understand, right? With a good amount of information, right? When we have Mr. T, I wish I could have an emoticon, but I cannot find the right emoticon. But nonetheless, so Trump versus Kamala Harris, right? Both of them are very powerful in terms of what they bring to the table. Remember, the world is not a hypothetical place. It is a practical place. Everyone has, their positive points and their negative points. But overall, as a general consensus, we need to go with the majority, and that is exactly what the elections are meant for, right? We need to get a general consensus of the entire country as to whom would they prefer as a whole, as a majority, right? And that is what we are going to find out on the 5th of November, correct? Now, coming and looking at the Nifty, people are expecting the Nifty. We are expecting the Nifty to rise, but again, it is subjective because we still the competition between Mrs. Kamala Harris and Mr. Donald Trump is so stiff, is so competitive that the markets can be volatile in either direction because there is stiff competition. When there is stiff competition, we do not know for a fact who can win or who might not win or who might win, correct? Let's look at the S&P 500 to have a quick look as to what the markets are showing from based on the US. So again, I just want to reiterate. I want to reiterate as in to just to confirm that since how we look at the Nifty is the top 50 companies listed on the National Stock Exchange. All right. So similarly, how the Nifty operates on the National Stock Exchange, or Nifty is the index of the Indian economy. We have the S&P 500, right? Standard and Poor. The full form of S&P is Standard and Poor. All right. Now don't get into what is the meaning of Standard and Poor. These are just abbreviations, right? The short form of Standard and Poor is S&P 500. All right. So this is the current chart of the S&P 500. I hope everyone can see. Now, as you can see, unlike the Indian economy, the US economy, based on its data on the charts, has been doing phenomenal, right? Has been very strong. Now, whether Mr. T wins, Mr. Trump wins, or Mrs. H wins, right? Now, the general consensus based on who is doing well, who might win, who might not win, when We are comparing it with Mr. T to Mrs. H. The general consensus is if Mr. T wins, that the economy should rise. Correct? I mean, again, it is a hypothesis. It's not practical, but the general consensus based on the articles being published, or when I'm reading through different news articles, this is currently what it is showcasing. So let me denote Mr. T with orange, and let me denote Mrs. H with purple. All right. So it is easier to understand in terms of color. And if there is a chance for Mrs. H to win, then that might have the opposite factors based on the consensus in terms of the articles and reports that have been published. All right. Why? Because Trump is favoring the economy as a whole, correct? Well, Mrs. H does want to, make the economy flourish, but her first priorities are uplifting, right? The backward classes and the middle class workers by easing, by giving better mortgage rates, by boosting housing supply, by discounting grocery supplies, so on and so forth. While Trump is more clear, more assertive, more aggressive in terms of that will be taken care of, but now the main focus is for the economy of the USA, right? So both of them have their ideologies. There is no one right or wrong thing, right? It is always a culmination of different factors that should be taken into account. Based on the current market condition, there is no doubt in seeing that the S&P 500 has been going at an all-time high. So there is always a dispute in terms of opinions. Isn't the market already oversold? So many people are questioning this. Isn't the market oversold? So when people are when people are looking at this particular context, they were like, the market has been rising since so long, correct? Market has been in an upward trend. Remember, the markets generally have corrections, as you can see in Nifty, as you can see in Sensex. Similarly for the S&P 500, currently the market has been appreciating, right? If I have to use the polylines or to give you an analysis, the prices have been going quite significantly in the upward direction. So people are like, generally prices are going upward. Shouldn't it start to correct? Because now prices are becoming very expensive. The value of the S&P 500 is right now at 5,823 basis points. So it kind of gives another perspective as to, yes, who wins and who loses, whether the market will exactly function based on whether the market will function exactly based on whoever wins or loses. Not necessarily, right? So people have to understand that it is different. Not just if Trump wins, the market has to escalate, or if Kamala Harris wins, then the market has to tank. That is not the concern, right? The markets are going to take into factor not just those factors into consideration, but also the general consensus and the geopolitical factors as well. I hope people are able to understand, right? So whether Mr. T wins or Mrs. H wins, right? We just have to make sure that in terms of how we analyze the markets, are we able to understand the entire picture? Now we talked about the S&P 500. Let me show you the dollar. Remember, when we talk about the dollar, it's going to be mainly focused about the dollar index, right? So let me open the dollar index. Now people would be like, but Harsh, what is the dollar index? So to keep it simple and to the point, the dollar index is nothing but a basket of different major currencies pegged against the dollar. So the dollar index is not just consisting of the dollar, but it comprises of the euro, the pound, the yen, the Canadian dollar, the Swedish krona, so on and so forth. You can do a lot of research on Google to find out more. We look at the dollar again, it's a dollar index, it's not the US dollar currency, right? But the index gives us the index, right? I hope people are able to understand. I don't want people to get confused. We are talking about the US dollar index, right? based on the from a technical point of view, right? There had been a severe correction. Now prices are correcting back up again. So the consensus, the movement of price has been more or less sideways, but in the last couple of months, the prices have been depreciating. Currently, the markets have started to correct. Now again, the same question arises: whether this is going to be Mr. H or it's going to be Mrs. T, right? So based on the consensus or based on the number of articles that I have come across, that is the reason why people have to understand when consensus are mentioned or published. It is important to understand that that is an opinion of a particular person. Now, how will it react into real life scenario? It will be completely different. Sophia is asking, okay, why? Sophia, you have to be a little more elaborate in terms of explaining what exactly is meant by why. I mean, I need more information for that. So, based on the consensus of different publications out there, people are telling that again, if Mr. H wins, there is strong tendency for the dollar to appreciate, and this resonates back to the time when, I mean, if you remember, when did Trump come first into presidency? Let me find it on YouTube, on Google once again. When did Trump first become president, right? So Trump had become president in January 2017, right? The reason for this is to give you a quick January 2017. Let me zoom out to show you exactly what happened on Jan 20. Remember, when we use technical analysis, right? Technical analysis is used on the basis that if something has happened in the past, there is strong possibility for it to again react in the future, right? So 27 Jan 2017, somewhere around here. This one, I remember clearly. Yeah, this one. It's going to be around this area, and I still remember that that movement because I was personally looking at the markets that time itself when impact when wait price fluctuations, right? So price fluctuations when Trump won, all right, won the elections. We're talking about 2017, right? In 2017, right? I hope people are able to understand the price fluctuations when Trump won the U.S. election. And I'm talking about this candle. Okay, let me shift it over here. This one. All right, I hope people can see this huge candle. This is when, people were expecting Mrs. Hillary Clinton to win. The polls were showing that she was in the majority of, gaining more votes. But as and how the results were coming to a conclusion, as and how more data was being accumulated over the last couple of hours before the polls were concluded and before the results were out, that is the time when Trump started to get an increased number of votes, and that flipped the entire market scenario. So when the markets had come out, had taken into consideration as to what had happened, if they had expected Mrs. Hillary Clinton in the year 2017 to win the U.S. elections, and she being a member of the Dominion Republic, right? The Republican is handled by Mr. Trump is a part of the Republican Party, and Mrs. Harris, Hillary Clinton, sorry, at that time was responsible for. Okay, give me a minute. Again, something has disconnected, so I have to go back in time. Here it is, right? So, as we were saying, Mrs. Hillary Clinton was from the Dominion Party, correct? So, as you can see, so why did Trump's presidency benefit the US dollar and the stock market? So, Sophia, Trump has always been a firm believer in, working towards uplifting the US economy or making sure to flourish, making sure that the US economy flourishes. So Trump has always been keeping the US economy as his priority in terms of what has to be done in the market so that the US economy can flourish even better. While the other party mates, such as Kamala Harris, her focus on the US economy is secondary. Her primary focus is first to uplift the local consensus, right? The general consensus of people living, in poverty, or people who are mid-level, who are in middle class, by easing grocery rates, by giving better mortgage rates. While Trump is focused more on how the economy functions, right? How US stands in the world, right? In terms of where exactly US stands in terms of its world power. And that is the reason Trump's presidency has benefited, right? Exactly. So the movement is because of the reason that first people were expecting Mrs. Hillary Clinton. I'm talking about the year 2017. So during that time, when the price had and when the markets had anticipated that Hillary Clinton would be winning, there was a strong fall in price. It was only when the elections had come out and people were because again even at that time the competition was cutthroat. There was very strong competition, correct? So if you are writing a sudden and sharp price movement, exactly. So if you are during elections, especially during these kind of elections where everyone is glued to the charts, everyone is looking at the market, there is going to be very severe, volatility, and that is where either a lot of people make money or a lot of people lose money. So be careful that during these uncertain times where you're not clear in terms of what the result will be, you will expect huge fluctuations, right? So prices started to be very bearish on that particular day, but then turned out to be not just bullish but continued bullish, right, for quite a while. That is because when Trump was, elected as the president of the United States of America, that is the time people knew that the economy has to flourish because Trump always, focuses on establishing policies that garner to the US public and the economy, right? And that is the same reason. So if Trump has had a similar effect in the year 2017, we almost have a similar effect. So if Mr. H comes into play, we do expect the prices to again appreciate, right? And if we have Mrs. T, we do expect prices to depreciate. I hope people are able to understand. I hope how I'm able to connect the dots to give you a clearer understanding. From a technical perspective, remember again, there was cutthroat competition at that time back in the year 2017, and there is cutthroat competition right now as we are talking for the current US elections. So there is going to be a strong tug of war between who might win, who might lose. The markets are taking into consideration as to what might be the possible scenarios. Sorry, of things happening. So when we're trying to connect as many dots as possible and even looking at the past data, right? So when Trump had won, the candles had shown a long wick, but the prices had shot up like there was no tomorrow. So similarly, we do expect that again, people, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important to understand. These are the analysis that we are trying to, to provide you. Now, will this happen in real life? Maybe, maybe not, right? But the general consensus based on the articles that have been published on the website and based on several YouTube or videos circulating on social media, these are the current stats that have been projected. What is your preference? Whom do you want? Whom do you want the U.S. elections to be won by? Are you voting for Mr. Trump? Then write one. Are you wanting to miss? Are you wanting Mrs. Kamala Harris to win? Then type two. Write down in the comment box to share your opinions or whom you want to win. I mean, if you ask my personal opinion, uh, I mean, again, it's a personal opinion, so don't take it personally. It is just my own opinion, but I think Mr. Trump is going to win because he has a higher chance, and it is proven, in the past electoral, tenures during his time at the U.S. During his time as being the president, he has uplifted the U.S. economy. The dollar has strengthened. The S&P 500 has also strengthened. So again, when things have worked out in the past, I think he has a better chance. But I might be wrong, correct? Because the polling say the campaigns are still running. There is stiff competition between the two. Analysts are projecting stiff competition for both Mrs. Kamala Harris as well as Mr. Donald Trump. So we will only be able to notice on the 5th of November as to what happens. And please remember, with a lot of uncertainty comes huge fluctuations. So please bear in mind that you will be having fluctuations in the market, and it is always advisable to be cautious about, right? So I hope people have understood, and I have been able to, give a good depiction as to how the US elections might have an effect based on whoever wins, based on their based on their qualities, based on their strengths. Mr. T being more of an aggressive person in terms of having that hawkish behavior, while Mrs. Kamala Harris having a more dovish behavior, first caring for the people, then thinking about the economy. Sophia is writing, if the election results align with market manipulations, it may trigger a global stock market rally, which in turn could drive the Indian stock prices up. That is exactly. The US markets and the Indian markets are almost going, hand in hand. Yes, we do have a current correction on the Indian share market, on the Nifty and Sensex, but today that too is kind of showing some kind of bullish sentiment. So could there be an uplift in the US in the Indian share market based on the US elections? That is correct, Sophia. You are very correct. Conversely, if the election results surprise the market, it may lead to volatility in global stock market and even spark a risk averse sentiment, having a negative impact on the stock market. That is correct. It all boils down to who is going to win, who is not going to win, correct? With a lot of emphasis on the fiscal policies being placed in terms of improving the monetary policies, in terms of improving the welfare of the communities in the United States of America, in terms of establishing better dominance in the military sector, to healthcare, to infrastructure. There are so many factors too. Like we talked about India, right? How different sectors in India are comprised of different sectors. Similarly for the United States too. So when you have such an important event coming into place where you have to be very cautious in terms of what the market conditions are showing, what are the possible scenarios, as Sophia has mentioned quite elaboratively in terms of, and quite to the point, with a positive sentiment, optimism, if Trump wins or if Kamala Harris wins, how can the markets get affected on the English share market as well? Remember, if the US economy is going to get affected, will the US economy get affected by the US elections? Definitely. But will the English share market get affected by the US elections? Yes, as well. The US depends a lot on the Indian, the Indian manufacturers, and majority of the, the big blue chip companies are managed by Indians themselves. On the other side, even the US, the English share market is dependent on its US clients. So it's a give and take, right? It is a give and take. So there is going to be, implications as well on the English share market. It's not just the US share market or the US stock market that's going to be affected. It's going to be the English share market as well. I hope I'm able to, provide you with a good understanding in terms of why we are looking at, trying to first just understand the basics of what they have in plan, which parties they represent, what is the overall behavior of that particular candidate, and what are the promises that they have been making. We went through a couple of websites indicating in terms of the promises being made, what we expect the presidential candidates to be aware in terms of what they bring to the table, or what are the promises that they want to work towards, if they get elected, so on and so forth. So we mentioned about Kamala Harris. She wants to focus mainly on uplifting the middle class, the lower class, by reducing grocery rates, increasing house, in providing better housing opportunities, reducing mortgages, so on and so forth. While Trump is clear on, making strict foreign policies, right? As well as making strict, policies based on people who come from abroad to work in the country. What do we call them as? People who come from abroad and work in a particular country, right? Immigrants, correct. So immigrants are, going to have some sort of a backlash, because people are have already been experienced. When Trump came into power, we Indians also had a lot of issues, right? When it came to the F1 visas, and we were not able to get visas on time. There was quite a lot of ruckus that was going around in terms of why we were not giving, why weren't our visas being stamped, why weren't we being allocated US visas, so on and so forth. So we would be experiencing a similar phase of events if the obvious happens. But nonetheless, please be aware. And it was good in terms of explaining, it's different. Remember, these things happen only once in 4 years, correct? The US elections happen every 4 years. So please be aware. And in terms of what will happen, how will it happen, be updated, be make sure to keep checking the articles, keep checking the consensus reports in terms of how are the candidates performing at the campaigns. The more optimistic results the campaigns produce, the better results the polling booths produce, correct? So I hope this has been of a great learning session in terms of what the US elections are, who are the candidates who are standing for presidency, and what are their strengths in terms of what they bring to the table, and most importantly, how will it affect not just the English share market, but also their own markets in terms of what we would be expecting, whether it's the S&P 500 if Mr. T wins, what is the general consensus, and if Mrs. H wins, then what is the consensus. We even looked at the dollar index, right? And we also had a similar picture based on past data when the US elections had happened in the year 2017, when Mr. Trump was, had become had stood up for the elections for the first time, and the results that the markets had showcased once he won. So we might be able to see a similar repetition of what had happened in the year 2017. Sophia writes, I've seen many people feel pessimistic about the Indian stock market following Trump's presidency. I mean, that is an opinion of people, but if you do look at the index, especially when you're talking about the Nifty, and based on how the the US stock market would have a possible scenario, we do expect the Indian share market to also have a bullish outlook, because at the end, India is included in terms of having strong connections. Remember, the US doesn't treat India as a threat, correct? They treat India as an ally. There is a lot of cultural exchanges that take place. There is a lot of economical exchanges, financial exchanges that take place. So based on the economy as a whole, and based on the connections between the two countries, they generally will have a synergetic movement in terms of price. So whether people feel pessimistic about the Indian stock market following Trump's presidency, maybe short term, right? Because Trump is against immigrants, right? Trump prefers, Trump is is always favoring, local, local benefits compared to benefits provided to immigrants, so on and so forth. So will it have an effect? Maybe, but very short term. Remember, it is the US elections. Will they have an effect on the Indian share market? Yes. But will it continue as long as it will have it as long as it has its impact on the US elections? No, it will get affected, but it will be for a brief moment, right? So let me just type it out. The US elections will have an impact on the Indian share market, but it will be temporary, right? It is not going to be dependent completely on the elections. Remember, if people are thinking that if Trump wins, the stock market is going to crash, that is not the case. US is one country of the 265 countries, 305, I guess it's 275 countries across the globe. So it will have an effect when the elections are out, but it will not have a lasting effect. I hope you understand, because the markets are connected, and yes, because of the anticipation the markets are going to get based on the expectations of so many countries, so many people, right? Everyone would be glued to the screen as to who's going to win. More than the elections, it's going to be more of a drama in terms of who's winning, who's losing. It's like entertainment as well. So will it have an effect on the Indian share market? Yes, but it will be very short lived. It will be very short compared to what its repercussions will be on the US economy, because here the elections are happening in US. So the US economy will definitely be involved in it in the long term. But when it comes to the Indian markets, they might have repercussions, but it's going to be short lived. It's going to be for a very short time. So I hope I was able to give a good explanation. If I've done a good explanation, write down in the comment box, say like, Harsh, you did very well. Harsh, very good. So I hope I've given you a good amount of information, and I know most of you are even tired, right? Because it's been an entire day. People are tired. I've provided you so much of information today that people might be like, Harsh, you have done excellent, but now there is too much of information to soak in. So anyways, I hope you all had a great day. I hope you all have a great evening. All right. So I hope to see you in the next session, which will be happening tomorrow. Please make sure to attend all our live streaming sessions. We have live streaming sessions 5 days a week, right? All the way from Monday to Friday. I make sure to provide you 3 live streaming sessions in the morning, in the afternoon, and the third live streaming session that is happening right now, right? Once the English share market closes. So I hope everyone had a good learning, a good understanding, and I wish each and every one of you a great evening. All right, so I will see you tomorrow, and until then, take care. Bye.